Are you tired of the cookie-cutter approach to education that's stuck in the last century? Are you seeking a win-win situation where your family thrives, your kid's education is revolutionary, and you still get to chase your own dreams? Welcome to Unschooled Unleashed. Unlock your child's genius. I'm your host, Matthew Jarecki, an unapologetic rebel dad and promoter of what many consider to be educational anarchy. You know the world isn't going to be won by those that just toe the line. It's the innovators, the visionaries, and the resilient spirits that are going to thrive. Our mission here is to forge those world changers within our very homes with less stress, energy, and time. Unschooled Unleashed starts now. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of Unschooled Unleashed. I'm your host, Matthew Jarecki, and today we're going to talk about how to foster courage in your children. Way easier said than done. I'm going to tell you my current process and exactly how I'm viewing things and what I'm doing. But boy, oh boy, if I had the answer, quick, easy answer to this, a lot of parenting wouldn't be necessary. So I won't belabor too much on this. Let's dive in. Today we're going to talk about helping children lean into their discomfort. If we run from our discomfort, we're literally going to spend our life as a runner because growth requires discomfort. And we want to teach our children to be growers. Growth mindset, let's say. When there's something in front of us that we need to work our way through, it's going to be uncomfortable to make our way through that. And we want to give them the framework in which to be able to lean into that discomfort and make it past it and use it as a learning opportunity. Oftentimes discomfort is actually just a fear of the unknown, is what I see. We don't know what leaning into that discomfort might cause, and therefore we're scared and we run the other way or we freeze. The only way through to the other end is to go right through to the other end. You have to lean into that discomfort. So we're going to talk a little bit of a strategy, a little bit of mindset for the parents, a little bit of mindset for the children that you can pass on. And hopefully you can lead your children to the other end, because if we don't teach them how to do it, then they're going to have to figure it out on their own. And the risk is they might not figure it out on their own, but at least that you can give them the framework to be able to do that. And I think that's very important, because when you talk about change, you're talking about growth. When you're talking about really just confronting the world, being an adult in the world, you're going to talk about fear and discomfort. And we need to learn how to work through that. And you're going to face this challenge at home, especially if you're unschooling, because really in any situation, if you're a parent, your kids are going to be scared to do something that they want to do, that they know they should do. I've experienced that in my life, and we'll actually talk about some of these examples. But let's start to jump in the first topic, which is embracing this discomfort. So there's a nature of fear and discomfort in growth. Children, just like adults, often feel fear when facing these new challenges. And what we hope to do is teach them how to embrace that discomfort, because it's essential for personal growth and development. One of the things I'm working through with one of my kids right now is just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's very difficult for him right now. And from a very young age, he's been having to face some of that discomfort, and he's figuring out a way through, and I'm very proud of him. But it's his own journey, it's his own struggle, and it's something that's very challenging for him. But he's working his way through it. And we talk a lot about different things, especially examples from my life and the Bible, since I'm a Christian. One of those examples is the story of King David. Now, David, before he was a king, before he was anointed as a king, he was just a shepherd. And that's kind of all he did. And the story of King David, if you don't know, when he was a child, was there was an army. And in this army was seemed like they could not be conquered because they had this big giant named Goliath. He was 8-9 foot tall. He was huge. Every soldier was scared of him. And when David went to, I think it was deliver a message, if I'm not mistaken, to his brothers who were on the battle lines, he decided he was going to stand up to Goliath because if he could make it through Goliath, the army would run the other way. He was the biggest and most challenging person in the opposing army. So David decided he was going to battle Goliath as a child. All these men are scared of this big giant, but David decided he was going to do it, and they thought it was a death sentence. But the king decided to give David his best armor, his best weapons, all these things to fight. Man's best armor. And David put on all the armor. It was too heavy for him. He couldn't fight with it. He's never been trained in it. And he realized this was a losing path. He needed to have faith that he could fight this inconquerable giant on his own with the gifts and skills that God gave him. So he leaned into discomfort. He didn't know exactly how he was going to do it, but he picked up 3 stones and a slingshot, something he was very well versed in at being a shepherd, because that's how he fought off the lions and anything attacking his herd. And he ended up hitting Goliath with his slingshot, rock from his slingshot, in the hardest point on the human body, right in his forehead. And this is the least likely place to get hit and harmed because it is the most powerful, but yet he did it. And against all odds, not seeing a pathway through it and thinking it was a death sentence amongst everyone, who was on the other of the soldiers who were fighting the army in Goliath, David won against all odds. But it was an uncomfortable thing for him. And it exemplifies using your innate gifts and confronting your fears head on, even when the odds are against you and overwhelming. And really, I believe that you have to have faith in a higher power in order to do that, because we can never do it on our own and we can't see all sides of a problem. So therefore, you have to have a support system. You have to have someone telling you objective truths to overcome our fears. And we cannot rely on man's armor. We cannot rely on man's weapons. We have to rely on a higher power in order to get us through that. And I think that comes from only a higher power. I call that God. You might call that something else. I don't know. But me as a Christian, I call it God. I call it Jesus. And I that's what I teach my kids. So you need to have a framework for your children in order to see life through that, because they're going to have those difficult things. And that's a great historical example. Some of the challenges to overcome these fears that I see are lies we tell ourselves. We would need to recognize that our self-doubts are often based on untruths that limit our potential. These are lies we tell ourselves. It's often in the form of an excuse. You can call it a limiting belief. You can call it whatever you want. But it's going to basically set the framework for how we're going to view the world. So, for example, if I say I can't ride a bike, you're never going to try and ride the bike, right? You're never even going to get on that bike to even try. This is a lie you tell yourself. The truth is, and this is what we need to do, is we need to confront the lies with truth. The truth is, if you told yourself, if I practiced enough, I bet I could ride that bike. If I devoted my entire life to riding that bike, I bet I could figure out how to ride that bike. That's the truth. Truth is, you don't know how long it's going to take. It might take your entire life to be able to ride that bike, but the truth is, you could do it if you put your mind to it. Then you're confronted with the choice. Is it worth spending all this time and energy on riding a bike that I don't know if I'm going to be able to master? Because I don't know if I have the time to be able to devote to this or the skills necessary to be able to do it. But I do think I can do it given the right circumstances. Now you have a choice, and you can say it's worth it or it's not. And if something on the other end is worth it, then go for it. And if it's not worth it, then don't go for it. But you know you have to make that choice. I know in my personal life, I had a belief that I was bad at math. I decided to confront that And let's go back a little bit. When I was in third grade, I missed a week of school due to the flu. Happened to be the week we covered fractions, an introduction to fractions and what they are and how to, add fractions. Well, bad week to miss, because they just handed me a stack of paperwork about the size of the width of my thumb and said, good luck. Both my parents worked. They both had jobs, and I went home and I had to try and figure it out on my own. And I just told myself, well, I'm bad at math because everyone else seemed to get it. That was a lie I told myself. I didn't tell anyone that I thought that. I just assumed that's what it was. So there was no confronting it with truth until I was 25 years old. That's when I decided to confront it. And I said, you know what? If I work hard enough, I can learn this. Maybe I'm not gifted at it, but maybe I can learn it. What I found is I was actually gifted at this. That I just told myself this lie, and when I confronted it with truth, it kind of went away. I had to work very hard and lean into my discomfort, and I had to go overcome that fear. But when I decided to tell myself that truth, that's when I was willing to overcome it. And I used that story because it's a story I told my child. And now I'm telling it to you. And maybe you can talk about it with your child if you got no example. But otherwise, I think you can look in your life and find a time in which you confronted your own fear and you decided to jump in head first and leaned into this discomfort for something that was worth it. Tell your children these stories. The courage happens when you actually confront the lie with truth. That's where the courage happens. Courage is standing in the face of fear. It's leaning into that discomfort even though you know it's going to be there. That's called a courageous individual. You're not running from it. You're going to lean into it. This is how breakthroughs happen. This is how you find your limits, your understanding of your ability, because if you're never tested, you never see how far you can truly go. And I think that's very, very important. You need to confront those limiting beliefs, those lies you tell yourself in order to find out your own capabilities. The next thing in order to overcome those fears and lean into this discomfort is we need to reframe mistakes. In our household, we often view mistakes as a death sentence. I don't know if that stems from me being a perfectionist that I'm passing on to my children, but boy, oh boy, are we scared to make mistakes. And that's exactly the culture I do not want to feed. I do not want to nurture. I do not want to pass that on to my children, but obviously somewhere maybe I'm passing that on, or maybe they're just prone to it, or maybe that's just the best way they can be attacked in order to make them scared and fearful and run the other way. But we need to reframe mistakes as learning opportunities. Mistakes are the best ways to learn. In fact, you find out where your own limitations are by making mistakes. So we need to encourage our children to view mistakes as a natural part of learning and not as failures. We don't have to get it right the first time. In fact, getting it wrong is one step closer to getting it right. And if you fail 1,000 times, that was just the 1,000 steps you need to get through in order to get to that one success. So we need to instill a belief of perseverance through our mistakes and we believe that leads to success. But we need to know why we're doing it. That's the big thing. We don't just do it for doing its sake. We don't do it because that's what we're supposed to do. We do it because we know it's the right thing to do. We do it because we know there's something we want on the other end of that. Because growth is hard. Mistakes are hard. Viewing yourself as a failure is not a productive way to view it. We need to allow our children to view mistakes as just the path to success. And I think that's something that is actually uniquely American. I've heard, now obviously this can exist outside of the United States. I think it's actually one of the best things that's a part of human nature. Given freedom, we can have the opportunity to make mistakes and then overcome it. With our freedoms in this country, in the United States, we tend to view mistakes as a general rule, just part of the path, just part of the learning. You can fail in a business 3 or 4 times, but you eventually get it right. And then we focus just on, the perseverance and success to make it through that and how they got it right. And we call them an overnight success, but really there's a whole backstory to it. Whereas in some of the other countries, if you try and start a business or you try and venture down a certain road and you fail, you're labeled as a failure. At least that's the way they frame it to me in the stories that I read or hear about. And that's part of the attraction to the United States, the American dream, if you will, is the freedom to be able to make these decisions and continue to fight through it and make yourself a success if you just work hard. So I think that's something that we want to instill in our household, is mistakes are just the steps to success. And eventually you will get there. We also talk about the concept of legacy and courage. Your legacy. I tell my children, you're writing your legacy. There's a book that's being written about you. The stories we're going to talk about you. I tell them stories of my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my stories. And these are all a part of our legacy. They will have their own legacy. And I tell them, you are writing right now your own legacy. This problem you have in front of you is a part of the story you will tell your children or you will encourage your friends with. You will overcome this. We have to agree first this is possible. So I ask them, do you think if you devoted your entire life to overcoming this, you could? And they say, yes. Of course I could. If I devoted my entire life to this. I said, okay, so it's going to happen. Well, that's the next question. Is it worth it if you're able to do that? And they say, yeah, of course it is. When they're struggling with something big. And I say, okay, well, we have already decided, or you've already decided, that you are going to make it through this. Now it's just a question of when. When you do that, that will be a powerful story that you can now pass on, and that will be a part of your legacy. It'll be part of the book that you open of your life. And viewing it through the lens of a legacy, I think, is very important, because what you want is the common theme of courage throughout that. Everyone gets scared. Everyone has challenges. Everyone is uncomfortable. Everyone wants to run the other way, and often does. Everyone makes mistakes, and you might have made 1 million mistakes before you figure it out, and you had the courage to stand up to it and actually did it. You actually overcome it. You leaned into discomfort and you conquered it. And now that's a part of your legacy that you can pass on. Everyone looks up. They make movies about this stuff. Someone is scared. There's a challenge that no one knows if they can make it through. And then they go over and confront that, and they are victorious on the other end. They slay the dragon and they come out of the cave victorious. This is the hero's journey. And telling your children that they are the hero in their own journey, I think, is a very powerful framework in which to view the world. Now, I also make sure that, because I'm a Christian, that I say we don't do this on our own. This is actually the actual courage to do this, and the faith that we will be taken care of either way comes from our higher power, what I call God. Because I, as a human, can't give myself any kind of guarantees, but the only guarantee I can get is that my higher power will take care of me. And I will be better on the other end. That my God will give me what I need to either make it through this or take me back home to heaven. Either way, it's called success. And I just think, like, if I see a kid possibly, what I see as being abducted by someone who's going to kidnap them and possibly do bad things, I will give my life for them. That's what I hope I have the courage to be able to do so. And I'll call it success even if I don't live, as long as I stopped them. As long as I stood up to that person and I did what I was supposed to do, the right thing, I call it success. And that's what I mean by even if I don't live. Moving on, let's give some practical strategies for parents to, or as we view it through the lens of this, we're educators as well as we educate our kids at home. We need to promote self-directed learning in challenging situations. We need to allow children to take the lead in their learning experience, especially in the subjects they find intimidating. Now we're viewing it through this lens of education. They're going to be scared of something, and they're going to want to run the other way. One of my sons was very, 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 very scared of getting anything wrong with math, and we still struggle with that to this day. But he's leaning into discomfort, and it's okay for him to get it wrong. And we back off and we allow him to, we dive into it, then we kind of back out of it. We dive into it, we back out. And he learns how to deal with failure, with the scary subject of math. It's intimidating, because he feels like he has to get it right. He has to get it perfect the first time. And that's a lie we tell ourselves. We're trying to slowly reframe whatever was cemented in his brain, whatever lie he accepted in his head, that he has to get it right the first time. We're slowly breaking that. But we do it at his pace. We let him take the lead. But we refuse to force our way through it. Because I think pushing down your emotions and trying to just force your way through it, although there's a time for that, is not in the time for building the framework for how you're going to view the world. Because pushing your emotions down is not good. And this approach aligns with the philosophy of backing off to promote an interest-based learning without a rigid curriculum. If we try and force our way through it, that's what we would call a curriculum, staying in line with the curriculum, at the pace of whatever. So we got to put our head down and just push our way through. Again, there's time for that, but not when we're teaching the framework on how to view these and view the world. And I think that that's one of the downsides of schooling and curriculum is we have to just, you got to do what you got to do, and you got to do it right now. Again, there's a time for that, but I don't think when we're trying to change something that's deep-rooted in a way to view the world, I think that's the most important thing, and math comes second, personally. Moving on, we need to build a supportive environment. This is very difficult for me, I must admit. I'm not a very, how do I say it? I tend to be a hard charger. I think that's probably where, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. That's how I've viewed the world for many years. I don't know if that's I have a couple different theories. I think some of it's childhood inheritance of responsibility that wasn't mine to inherit, and partially because I was in the Army as well, and that you just push forward no matter what. I was in the Army infantry, and in the Army infantry, it doesn't matter if you're scared, it doesn't matter what's in front of you, you continue to push through, and that's your only option. That's it. You push through, even if your life is in danger. You run towards the danger, not away. That doesn't, those two things combined together doesn't build a very nurturing and supportive environment. Now, I'm trying to change my legacy. I'm trying to change the way I interact with the world in order to model it for my children. Again, I'm an imperfect human. And somehow they've inherited that as well, at least some aspects of it. But what I'm trying to do is provide my children with the tools, exposure, and encouragement they need to face and overcome their fears by using my stories, by using biblical stories, by using historical figures, by making sure they know I'm on their team, by going over and giving them hugs when I see hugs are needed, or just shutting up and just loving them when I know they need love. It's very difficult for me. But that's my own learning challenge. I'm going to make a million mistakes, and I have. And I talk about it with my kids. They listen to this podcast. And they know I make mistakes, and they know I admit it, and they know I talk about it. Today's been a very tough day. Today we're kind of going through a bunch of nonsense. We've had everything from screaming breakdowns to me losing my temper to projectile vomiting all over the table. It's just been a rough day. And this is supposed to be my day off. I wasn't even supposed to record this podcast today. I was supposed to have it done yesterday. It didn't happen. It's how life goes. And all I can do is control me or make decisions about how I'm going to react to the situation. I made mistakes today, so did they, and we're going to recoup. This is part of the supportive environment. It's giving a little bit of grace to myself and everyone else involved. So after this podcast, I'm going to go down and we're going to fix a little bit, hopefully. Well, I'm going to fix my part of it. Let's just say that. Part of that supportive environment is going to be connecting my children to opportunities where they can test their limits safely, such as, in this given circumstance today, such as just allowing them to interact with each other again. Because right now we're all separated because we can't stop arguing and picking at each other and yelling at each other and talking nasty and doing all the crazy stuff. But as we look at through a lens of their education, part of this podcast, it's going to be testing their limits with apprenticeships or challenging situations or taking a course they might not know they can do, or going over and diving into something they might not be successful in and they might absolutely fail. And that's okay. As we move forward with things, we're going to invest some money in things, and on the other end, it might not have a payout, and that's okay. But at least they challenge themselves, and viewing the challenge and being and standing up to that challenge, leaning into the discomfort is what we'll call success. Having that courage is success, whether you fail miserably or not, because that's just a part of the learning journey. I also want to instill resilience and confidence in my children, and I think the only way you can do that is actually teaching your children to identify and challenge the falsehoods they believe about themselves, and then overcoming that. That's what resilience is, and learning how to do that it does instill confidence, because as they fail and they get back up, that's where the confidence comes from. We need to reinforce the message that the greater the struggle, the more significant the victory. In my own head, I go back to 2016, and this is an example not with myself, but it was with sports. And sports is often this weird thing that's not real life, but feels like real life. People are truly being tested. They're truly battling, not just messages they send themselves internally and then showing up on the court or the field to overcome that. And then actually doing it and seeing these remarkable comebacks, it's this microcosm of life is really what it is. And I remember back to my hometown basketball team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. In 2016, we had a famous player. He still plays today. His name's LeBron James. He's one of the greatest players who ever lived. And he came back to my city, to my team, Cleveland, in order to win a championship, just like he said he would when he got drafted. And in 2016, he was playing a team called the Golden State Warriors, who recorded the best regular season record in the history of the NBA. This team was on fire and seemed unstoppable. Then, in the finals, the last series, whoever wins this is going to be the champion. The Cavs against the Golden State Warriors, that's the team they were playing, they went down 3-1. Golden State had 3 games they won, and the Cavs won 1. Once you hit 4 wins, that's it. You're the winner. No one's ever come back from a deficit of 3-1. No one. Everyone wrote them off, including in Cleveland. I didn't, just because I like the underdog. And not everyone in Cleveland wrote him off, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people in Cleveland did, and there's many friends I had that I'm like, nope, they're not out of it yet. Nope, they're not out of it yet. No, I'm going to sit there and root for my team. And I just remember they won the next game. Now they're down 3-2. Then they won the next game. Now it's 3-3, and whoever wins this last game wins the finals. And it came down to the last seconds, and they won the NBA Finals. And Cleveland, for the first time since the 1960s, so 50 years, became a champion. And that was because LeBron James came back to win a championship in Cleveland against all odds. My point is, the greater the challenge, the greater the struggle, the more significant the victory is, the more powerful the message is. Almost everyone wrote this guy off, our team off. Yet he decided not to give up, and he powered his way through it, through grit and resilience. And it wasn't just him, it was the entire team. Kyrie Irving scored a 3 couple seconds, and then LeBron James went up and blocked a shot that was going to be the game winner, and they ended up winning. It was an incredible victory, probably the most significant game I've ever watched, the most powerful game I've ever watched in my life. And it was my home team, and I was downtown, and we celebrated downtown. It was great. Over 1 million people showed up for the parade, and it was just fantastic because it was it was an end to a 50-year drought of championships for a major league city. This is, the plague of our city is we've just had this drought, and we called it the curse of Cleveland, where we always lost in the most powerful ways. But that victory right there is more powerful because he left. He did not get a championship with Cleveland, but then he came back to do the impossible. And he did it against the most impossible odds, against the most impossible team that was his Goliath, and he did it. And that story is very, very powerful. And it's cool that he did it in our city. It's a part of our story. I know it's weird that we root for teams that we don't play for, but really I think it's a way that connects us in the community. It's pretty cool. So anyways, in conclusion, we just need to reform the way we view the world so we can pass that on to our children. We need to go over and confront those lies with truths so we're not runners. We need to instill confidence in our kids. And the only way we instill confidence in our children is encouraging them to take risks and fail, because the success is on the other end of the failure. We need to have persistence and grit. This is my opinion, we need to go to our higher power. We need to go to our God and say, I can't do this alone. I truly believe that, because I don't think we as a human being can do anything on our own. I think it's going to take some magic behind the scenes that I call miracles, that we're just in the right place at the right time. We need to have faith that will happen. And if we don't, then we went down for the right cause, and that was the best we could do. We need to prepare our children for life's challenges, because they will be challenged, and the future is only going to be more rocky. We need to prepare them for adulthood, to confront their fears. We need to create the future Martin Luther Kings, the future Abraham Lincolns, the future George Washingtons, those future leaders that are going to reshape the world and do what is right, not because it was easy, but because it was the right thing to do, and it was hard. And then on the other end of that is victory, and I think that's what shapes the American spirit, is we do the right thing. We got rid of slavery when the rest of the world throughout history was doing it. Britain started that, but it still persisted there, and the United States says we're done with this, and we did it. We actually conquered slavery. Yet we're demonized in the 21st century for having ever done it, but I choose to view it as we were the ones who said enough is enough, and we banned it. We almost caved in order to get it done. We almost folded as a country, but we said it was worth it, and on the other end, we were victorious. And it was scary, and more people, hundreds of thousands of people died, maybe millions. I don't even know how many people died. I know it was the most deaths out of any war we've ever fought. American lives lost, American lives were lost in the Civil War than any other war in American history. But it was worth it on the other end to get rid of that awful thing we call slavery. And that's the story I think we should embrace, as opposed to we're evil for having ever done it and judging ourselves, because that's an unhealthy way to view the world. And I want to teach my kids to view their lives not based on the mistakes they made, but they actually confronted something that was evil or wrong or a lie or limiting, and they overcame it, and they were victorious, because that's what they write in the history books, if they're healthy. That's the stories we want to tell ourselves, right? It's the stories that live on. Anyways, with that, I'll end today's episode. So stay curious, stay unschooled, and stay away from the algebra nightmares. I'll catch you in the next episode. So here's where we roll up our sleeves and bring out the big guns. If you support our mission, then please leave a review. On Unschooled Unleashed, we are talking about using a radical approach to education in today's world, and the more 5-star reviews we have, the more people will feel comfortable with the ideas, strategies, and principles we discuss. It gives legitimacy to our message, and the podcast's algorithm prioritizes us so we can reach more people. You may even have your 5-star review read on our podcast. Before I let you go, I have to pause and say this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Your presence here is the fuel that ignites this movement. I am incredibly moved that you trust in us enough to click play. You, my friends, are the caped heroes in this story, the guardians of your family's learning journey, and a beacon of hope for your community. Be bold. Do what you think is best for you and your family. Thanks again for tuning in and taking this courageous leap outside of the box for this educational revolution. Welcome to the front line.